Welcome to the Committee on Human Services, and thank you for being here, everyone. Can everybody hear? No? Can you guys hear me now? Okay, thank you. So this is the Committee on Human Services, and we're opening up our Tuesday, February 12, 2013, 9:30 a.m. agenda here in Conference Room 329. And before we start, ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, we are being taped during this hearing. So when you come up in front to testify, please speak clearly, state your name, and if you're from an organization, and then you can give your message or your testimony. For those of you that are late testifiers or those without written testimony, you should sign up with our staff at the desk where you see their hands up, and you'll be asked to send in written testimony later. Also, all testifiers, again, to speak directly into the microphone, and that's it. So, members, we'll start with the first bill. House Bill 458, relating to random drug testing, requires the Department of Human Services to study and report to the legislature on the costs and benefits of instituting random drug testing for recipients of public assistance program benefits, effective July 1st, 2013. And our first testifier is our Director, Patricia McManaman from Human Services. Good morning.
Good morning, Representative and Vice Chair. This is Pat McManaman, Director of the Department of Human Services. I don't normally rely so heavily on the written testimony I've submitted, but I do know that this bill is of great interest. I do know that this bill is of great interest to the community. So if you will allow me the liberty of perhaps relying a little bit more on my written testimony this morning on this particular measure. The Department of Human Services appreciates the intent of this measure and would like to offer the following comments. Federal law currently includes two provisions added to the 1996 Welfare Reform Law, also known as PRORA. And those two sections relate to a lifetime ban on TANF and SNAP for persons convicted of any drug-related felony related to possession, use, or distribution. Other than this law, SNAP, or the United States Department of Agriculture, does not allow states to use drug testing in determining eligibility for SNAP. Quote, and I'm quoting a provision of the law, no state agency shall impose any other standards of eligibility as a condition for participating in this program, and that relates to the SNAP program. As such, the Department of Human Services would not be allowed under existing federal law to implement a drug testing program on SNAP applicants. States do have the option of opting out or modifying the ban imposed by PRORA as applied to TANF programs or financial assistance. Hawaii opted to modify the lifetime ban and chose not to ban individuals with illicit drug use and abuse, recognizing that disqualifying an individual from assistance was not a solution and understanding that treatment works. As a result, the state legislature passed HRS 346-53.3 to allow persons who comply with drug treatment offered by our department to continue to be eligible for TANF and SNAP benefits. For the Temporary Assistance to Needy Family Programs, TANF, and the General Assistance Financial Assistance Program, treatment for those identified individuals with substance abuse is presently a requirement, and only those willing to comply with treatment are able to participate in these financial programs. The department contracts with medical or psychological examiners to establish whether an individual suffers from substance abuse, illegal or otherwise. Examiners also establish the treatment plan and require urinalysis to monitor treatment compliance when they determine that the same is necessary as part of a treatment plan. Under TANF, individuals identified as having a substance abuse issue are required to participate in treatment as part of a barrier removal plan towards employment. Treatment, along with other activities, is allowed to meet their work participation requirements. First to work case managers monitor treatment, and failure to comply comply causes not only disqualification for the individual, but a whole family sanction. For the first non-compliance, ineligibility continues until compliance. For the second infraction, there is a 2-month sanction, full family sanction, that will continue beyond the 2 months unless the family complies with the drug treatment program. The third and any subsequent infraction makes the family ineligible, a whole family sanction, for a minimum of 3 months and continues beyond the 3 months unless the household reapplies and complies with the drug treatment program. For general assistance, an individual must be temporarily disabled to be eligible. That's the basic requirement for this program. The department also contracts with examiners in addition to certifying disability and establishing a treatment plan as required. Proof of treatment compliance, again, for substance abuse must be submitted 8 weeks following the initial approval and at scheduled intervals thereafter. In the event a case closes prior to the next treatment compliance check, applicants reapplying within 3 months of the case closure must provide proof of treatment before the benefits are approved. Failure to comply with treatment or to provide proof of prior treatment means a benefit denial. Failure to comply with treatment also causes a 1-month disqualification. The second disqualification for failure to comply is 3 months, and the third and future noncompliance result in a 6-month period of disqualification. In 2003, Michigan's attempted drug testing was ruled unconstitutional by the Michigan Court of Appeals. Until recently, no other state had implemented suspicious list testing. However, in 2011, Florida passed a law that required all TANF applicants to submit to a drug test. This law was implemented for just a few months, but it is currently suspended under a court injunction pending a final court ruling. Random testing may well be unconstitutional, and we defer to the Department of the Attorney General for the substantive point of law on this particular issue. Other states who have recently passed legislation, such as Arizona, do not conduct random tests. Arizona requires any recipient, quote, who the department has reasonable cause to believe engages in illegal use of controlled substances to be screened and tested, and it applies only to fiscal year 2012 and 2013. Until recently, Utah also implemented drug testing for its public welfare recipients. The new law requires welfare recipients to fill out a substance abuse questionnaire. If the survey shows a, quote, reasonable likelihood, end quote, for drug use, a drug test is required. A test failure would result in mandatory drug treatment for a period of 60 days. Refusal to take the initial drug test or to enter and complete treatment or a positive test for drugs in treatment can result in loss of benefits. Under the Utah program, cash benefits would be removed for the recipient's entire household for 3 months on the first offense and 12 months for subsequent test failures. During the 4 months of Florida's program, only 2.6% of the applications, and that's 108 out of 4,000, failed the drug test, and an additional 40 people did not return their applications. The experience in Florida shows few applicants tested positive, and therefore testing is not a cost-effective use of taxpayer money. In Arizona, only 1 applicant was disqualified and saved the state $560 out of the $200 million plus in benefits paid out since testing began in Arizona. And then we have a cite to that piece of information. The Center for Law and Social Policy, CLASP, in a policy brief updated in October 2012, wrote that random or widespread drug testing is an inefficient use of taxpayer money. Testing should be limited to cases where agencies have good cause to believe that a client may be using drugs, or where the client has acknowledged drug use and agreed to participate in the program. We believe that under the current law, Hawaii is taking the correct approach. Where we have strong basis to believe that our clients are under the influence of drugs, we ask for their voluntary participation in testing, and where they disclose or admit drug usage, we also then provide them with programs. There are strong sanctions already existing and in place, which are full family sanctions for our families and or are sanctions for the individuals. The Department of Human Services does not, and I state this unequivocally, support random drug testing of our TANF or general assistance applicants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next testifier, David Louie, Attorney General. Comments?
Good morning, Chair Carroll and members of the committee. My name is James Walther. I'm a Deputy Attorney General. We provided the following comments. We appreciate and understand the intent and the ideas behind the bill, but we believe that having the Department of Human Services conduct a study on the matter would be unnecessary in light of all the information that Director just gave, and the fact that random drug testing is, we believe, already determined to be unconstitutional. So it wouldn't be very productive to go through with this study. Normally, we wouldn't oppose any kind of study, and I'm sure the department, as Director McManaman said, wouldn't oppose that they do a study. But I think they've looked at the issue so carefully already. I think they have a lot of information that they've been able to put together and share with you. So we would ask that this be held. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next testifier, Daniel Gluck, Senior Staff Attorney, ACLU.
We'll stand in opposition. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Kat Brady, Coordinator of Community Alliance on Prison. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Carroll, Vice Chair Morikawa, and members of the committee. I'm Kat Brady, Coordinator of Community Alliance on Prison, respectfully testifying on behalf of the 5,800 people in Hawaii who are incarcerated and more than 1,500 that are serving their sentences thousands of miles from homes, their loved ones, and in most cases from their ancestral lands. We're in strong opposition to this. As the director of DHS said, plenty of research has been done. There is no need for a study. The majority of TANF recipients are children from impoverished families. Definitely lots of the people in prison come from impoverished families. So TANF is not a handout. It's an assistance program to help people become self-sufficient, and we support that. A report in 2011 from the Rockefeller Law Foundation started, "It's ironic that we, as a nation of opportunity, always turn on the downtrodden in times of trouble." That, to me, is so sad. And they go on to say drug abuse has no correlation with the length of time on welfare, and the incidence of abuse is much lower around welfare recipients. Another report from Women with a Vision say drug testing for TANF recipients is fiscally irresponsible and a waste of resources. Welfare recipients have been shown to use drugs at the same rate as the general population. Drug testing is not the most effective or sensitive way to identify people struggling with addiction. The universities of Michigan and Pennsylvania have said the benefits of drug testing must be weighed against the potential misallocation of treatment resources to occasional users. We respectfully ask the committee to hold this bill and respect our citizens, especially those who are the least fortunate and those struggling. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Pamela Leidy, Drug Policy Action Group, in opposition.
Thank you. We'll stand on our written testimony.
Thank you.
Opposition.
Thank you very much. Betty Sestak, AAUW Windward, in opposition. Joanne Adams, comments? Is Joanne here? No. Annie Hollis, Commission on Status of Women, in opposition. Jean Ota, Executive Director, Drug Policy Forum.
Stand in opposition.
Thank you. Suzanne Pell, in support. Katie Polidoro, Co-Chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus, in opposition. Heather Lusk, the Child Project in opposition. Teresa Bill, coordinator of the UH Bridge to Hope in opposition.
I'd like to share my testimony.
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Teresa Bill, testifying in strong opposition to HB 458, requiring DHS to study the costs and benefits of implementing random drug testing. I'm the coordinator of a University of Hawaii program called Bridge to Hope that supports TANF welfare participants in their pursuit of higher education as a means of economic self-sufficiency. However, my testimony is not the official testimony of the university. They are typically not inclined to oppose anything that is studying anything. However, I personally feel that it's important to not let damaging stereotypes go unaddressed. As a taxpayer, I oppose misdirection of DHS staff time and energy on a task that negatively targets and stereotypes participants. I can only hope that if a study is conducted and the assessments of DHS, the State Attorney General, the federal courts, and others are detailed and compiled in one document, that the Hawaii State Legislature will heed their professional opinions and set this issue to rest once and for all. The topic of drug testing public benefit participants recurs regularly and gives a forum to stereotypes and misunderstandings regarding low-income families and individuals who utilize public assistance programs. The tenor of these discussions presumes to connect welfare participants with drug use, drug testing, food stamp, and welfare fraud. They are inaccurate and destructive stereotypes that public assistance recipients must face and fight against every day. It contributes to the shame that our families feel and their reluctance to not only apply for public assistance, but to even share their participation in programs linked to welfare, including positive and successful programs like Bridge to Hope. Last January, Representative Mizuno had an informational briefing on this issue where it was clearly conveyed that while this might be a hot topic for state legislators across the country, the cost in terms of financial resources as well as privacy and civil liberties is high and far exceeds the benefits that are erroneously sought. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and please hold this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Representative Kamanela?
Yes, for the director, please.
Good morning, Representative.
Good morning. So I get it. You know, this whole room is against it, especially to TANF, and it's a reoccurring issue, as mentioned. But I think the intent is not really to disqualify people, but to weed out a few that might be using, government appropriations and still go on with their habits. I see it as a deterrent. So my question to you, is there any other form that we could do to implement to those few that are on substance abuse and receiving funds? Not necessarily just TANF. There's all kinds of funds that the department gives. So taking out TANF, what other recipient of public funds it could possibly be implemented if
Well,
TANF
it's
is
our
not
understanding that SNAP, the food stamp program, would prohibit this as an addition, so that would eliminate drug testing for the food SNAP program. That leaves you with our program for the aged, blind, and disabled.
Okay.
Some
We don't wanna go there.
800 people receive funds under that program. That's another financial assistance program that we have. We have our general assistance program. I think currently there's approximately 5,000 individuals who are on that program. I have to tell you, the average length of stay that anybody stays on that program is between 5 to 7 months. For most of our GA beneficiaries, it's a short-term program that helps them get back on their feet quickly and efficiently, but provides them with a minimal amount of assistance during their disabling period. Those are the financial assistance programs we have,
So
Representative.
you don't see none of them that could possibly, we can
Well,
possibly.
because you've ruled out TANF, because you've suggested that you wouldn't want a drug test for our aged, blind, and disabled program,
Okay,
that
yeah.
leaves then GA. As I've indicated before in our testimony, for those individuals whose disabling conviction is substance abuse, and that's not a reason to refuse them general assistance. We provide treatment. We have drug testing as recommended attached to that treatment. So we believe that there are already programs in place. Should they fail to submit to drug testing, should they fail to comply with the treatment program, then we go into sanctions, and they're cut off from benefits, and we have escalating sanctions. So we think there's already a system in place that disincentivizes individuals who are receiving treatment if they're non-cooperative, but incentivizes the right kind of behavior, which is to live a life free of substance abuse. I would echo the other concerns of the community. Quite frankly, I've read reports and statistics that upper middle class people have greater addiction problems than low income populations once we factor in alcohol. And so I think we're crossing into some pretty dangerous territory. I think this is going to be very costly in terms of litigation if we move forward in this arena and stray beyond the treatment program that was envisioned by a previous legislature many years ago when they passed the laws.
You mentioned something about the state of Utah. Can you repeat that again? I thought they have something that was implementable.
So I will, my testimony has been submitted and it is online. I will reread to you my testimony.
Just on
Recently,
Utah.
Utah also implemented drug testing of public welfare recipients. The new law requires welfare recipients to fill out a substance abuse questionnaire. If the survey shows a reasonable likelihood, end quote, that's their standard, for drug use, a drug test is required. A test failure would result in mandatory drug treatment for a minimum of 60 days. Again, keep in mind, we also require drug treatment. Refusal to take the initial drug test, to enter or complete treatment, or a positive test for drugs while in treatment can result in loss of benefits. That's the same for Hawaii currently. Under the rule, cash benefits would be removed for the recipient's entire household. Again, we also have full family sanction for 3 months for the first offense and 12 months for subsequent test failures. We would then, so that's the substance of and again, this law just went into effect, I believe, in 2012. I don't know if there's litigation pending in Utah or not. We don't know at this point in time,
Okay.
But I would defer to the Attorney Generals.
Thank you so much.
You're
ma'am.
welcome.
Members, any further questions?
I have a
Representative
follow-up to
Morikawa.
stay there. How long has the state been implementing this drug testing, pre-qualification and drug treatment type?
I think since
Policy.
shortly after the enactment of PRORA was enacted in 1996. As to the actual, so the TANF team is nodding their head, yes, 1996 or 1997.
And it's been consistently, used. Because you got to understand, I guess this legislation is coming out because there's an outcry from people saying, hey, these guys are druggies and yet they qualify for all of the benefits of social services. That's the only reason why I think this bill is coming forward, to let us know what, if this is implemented, how much it would cost and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if maybe we just need to be educated more about what your department has done, maybe the statistics.
We can, I believe last year's testimony, we provided estimated costs for urinalysis. It's quite costly. I would think that if we just look at the Florida example.
Director, was that provided just to each individual legislator, or
No,
just
I
here
believe
at the
last year, I
committee?
think in testimony, this
Yeah.
is a reoccurring
Right, and I
bill
think
that
it's going to
comes up year
continue
after year.
reoccurring until every legislator has something in hand, perhaps.
So
Because
we're
I've heard this before too, and I agree that it's not cost effective, but perhaps some kind of a document from your department might help.
So we can, I believe, as I was stating, that last year at Representative Mizuno's kind of omnibus informational hearing on this issue, we provided a cost breakdown if we were to drug test all of the TANF recipients. So we can get that information to you. I just don't happen to have it handy right now.
I think that would be really useful, and we wouldn't need this legislation. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions, members? Seeing none, directors, stay right there. I'm going to announce the next bill. House Bill 533, relating to the homeless, establishes the Return to Home program to assist eligible homeless individuals return to their home state if there is a support network available and the support network is able to receive them. Makes appropriation effective July 1st, 2013. And our first testifier is our director.
Thank you. Good morning again, Representative Vice Chair. Pat McManaman from Department of Human Services. The Department of Human Services appreciates the intent of this bill but has reservations about the cost implications and the priorities that this bill may have on the executive biennium budget. The department also has concerns regarding the prescriptive language of the services to be provided in this, quote, return to home bill. We are first required to provide individuals who are applying for this program with behavioral and physical health assessments, and I'm assuming we are asked to also bear the costs of any physical or mental health assessments. We are also required to obtain sufficient identification if the individuals don't have it to assist with travel. As you now know, in the new world we live in post 2011, post September 11th, you now need identification to board in airplane. In my previous experience of working with immigrants for 15 years plus, and also people in the community who were subject to the Real ID requirements and the TSA requirements for identification, I can tell you for many individuals in our community, getting an identification is a heavy lift. I worked with a man for many, many months who was born on Molokai. The birth was never registered. At some point in time, his family moved to Canada. He returned. The family history and contact with that island was long diminished. We worked for months and months and months through my office providing legal services, and we were unable to obtain sufficient identification for this gentleman to allow him to board an airplane to travel inner island. There are many stories like this across the nation. Just securing identification is a heavy lift and could be very costly to the department, and in some instances may require assistance of legal counsel. In addition, the bill requires the Department of Human Services to verify an individual's arrest, parole, or probation status and to ensure that they have proper clearance to leave the state. This also will require the department to interact with a variety of law enforcement agencies, public defenders, prosecuting attorneys, and perhaps even ultimately the courts, because if somebody is on probation or parole, they need permission of the courts before they can leave the state of Hawaii to return to their home jurisdiction. Finally, the department takes exception to the suggestion that homeless persons are, quote, in need of sufficient personal hygiene as an unnecessary and inappropriate stereotype of the homeless. In short, the DHS Homeland Programs Office does not have staffing or the fiscal resources necessary to administer this program. Providing transportation for a homeless individual back to their home state will not guarantee that the individual will not return to Hawaii and again become a consumer of our homeless services. The provisions of this bill may also be seen by those who might exploit it as an invitation to come to Hawaii on a one-way ticket and to partake in our homeless services with the expectation that they will receive a free trip home. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Next testifier is Javier Mendez Alvarez in support. We have late testimony. Fair Housing Coalition in support. Nympha Molina in support. Is there anyone here wishing to testify on this measure? Please come forward.
I was fortunate enough to get an all-expense-paid trip to Honolulu, and it was called Vietnam. And while I was here, I had a continuous income, not very high, but
Excuse me,
I had
sir.
a lot of people visit.
Could you state your name?
Oh, I'm Don Questamano.
In support or in opposition?
I'm in support. I had a lot of friends and associates come from the mainland, and Hawaii is marketed on the mainland as this beautiful destination, and it's all happy, and it's aloha, and they get here and they find out it's not exactly as advertised. They come into town and they don't have the connections that they have from where they originated, and if there's any faltering in their job or their economic position, namely they come over, big companies transfer people over here all the time, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, layoffs or what have you, the person finds himself on the street. He doesn't have the contacts and the resources that he has on other parts of the world, and even though they may not want to leave, it's to their economic benefit personally, and it's to the economic benefit of this system, because what happens is they start falling through the cracks, and they become not wards of the state, but they become issues that become very costly. When I came here, an airline ticket was like $50. They're much more expensive now, but if a person is qualified, has all his identification, doesn't have any medical problems or legal problems, and he's not able to find employment and he wants to leave, I think it would be an economic benefit to both himself and, if he's willing to go, and the state to allow him transportation out of Hawaii. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify? Please come forward.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Colin Kippen, and I am the chair of the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness. I'm here to just raise some concerns about this bill, and maybe to give just a little context. Our service providers that provide care to homeless folks are really essential in moving them out of homelessness and keeping them from becoming homeless again. As part of their normal work, what they work on is reunifying family members. Because what happens when you become homeless is that you, for a number of reasons, sever relations. It may have to do with your mental capacity. It may have to do with your sanity. It may have to do with drug or alcohol abuse. It may have to do with anger management. It may have to do with a whole number of issues that at the end of the day end up with relationships being severed. And becoming homeless is not just an economic issue. It has to do with the breakdown in family structure and in relations. So I understand the intention of this bill. I want to assure you that our service providers do all they can to try to reunify people who are homeless with their families and their loved ones, because that is probably the most effective thing to address homelessness, because when you lose that support network, you fall into homelessness. Some of the concerns with this bill are the duties that it imposes upon the state, because if a duty is imposed on the state, such as a duty to assure that they can travel safely because of their health, a duty to assure that there's somebody to catch them when they go to a foreign destination, a requirement that they obtain identification, a requirement that they have no warrants, parole holds, or other criminal justice involvement. Those are expensive, and you heard from the director indicating the cost of doing something like that. I understand the intention. I just think that perhaps this is one of those things where foundations or the private sector might be able to get involved in a way to establish a demonstration project, to start to work out some of these issues and to really understand who are the folks that need to return home and what that might cost and how we could do that in a cost-effective system that would not impose potential liability on the state of Hawaii.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else here wishing to testify in this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Representative Cavanella?
I would like the director, please. So I hear it that the number one concern in this bill is that the duties to the state. The intention of the introducer is not really to put this burden to the state, but rather an appropriation from the state. That if I could speak with the chair and say that that appropriation needs to go to a nonprofit that would handle it, which is really the intention of the introducer, would that be something that you can work with?
I think it doesn't make any difference. Once you require the state to provide these services to determine if the individual has any outstanding warrants, is on probation or parole, even if we subcontract those services, if a mistake is made, ultimately the state is liable as well as the nonprofit. If you require a physical or a mental examination, if that doctor makes an erroneous report as to the ability of this individual to travel, and this individual has a heart attack on his or her travel, or another disabling condition takes place, the state may be liable regardless of whether or not you have subcontracted to a private agency. You're imposing a broad spectrum of duties on the state for which you are exposing us to liability.
I think the bill says it is to be, you're not mandating anyone, it's purely voluntary. So by virtue of that, I don't think the state should be. Plus, every year here at the legislature, we appropriate a lot of money for things that the state gets sued on. And I'm not saying the state should be sued on this because it's purely voluntary. But I'm trying to alleviate some cooperation with the department so this thing can be implemented, because 20 to 30% of the homeless population are recent immigrants to the state that we can probably save some money. I would rather save that money for affordable housing. We appropriated $63 million for homeless services last year, wherein majority of that money went to salaries of executive directors and administrators. And I could see some incentive the more homeless people there are. But I'm trying to, because you mentioned appropriation. This is asking for $100,000 just to give it a try if it works. I mean, that's a lot of money. Some of the executive directors make $150,000 a year.
And
I don't see why.
And Representative, it's up to the board of directors of those associations to establish the pay grade for their individuals. Unrelated to that issue, however, I don't believe $100,000 would cover the effect of this program. It's costly to obtain identification for individuals to travel. As you know, many homeless people are without identification, and that's one of the barriers not only to travel, but it's also an additional barrier to employment. Assuring that they are physically capable of traveling may also require medical tests and or opinions. It's not like it was in the 50s where somebody gets on an airplane and can simply travel from Hawaii to the mainland or another destination. It's much more complicated than that.
So if $100,000 is not enough, how much do you think it is?
I don't know at this point in time. It would depend upon the scope of the program. You've identified 20 to 30% of the homeless population are newcomers. I don't know. We haven't done any census on how many of those individuals would want to return. I think that the governor's director on homelessness may have a point. Maybe if the legislature is interested in a program like this, you should just turn to a public-private partnership with the private government and exempt the state from overseeing the responsibility for this program.
So you said public-private partnership. So in other words, the public, which is government, is still involved?
No, I think it would be reaching out and asking the private sector if they have any interest in establishing an emergency transportation fund. And since there is an existing system, i.e. the homeless shelters, they could work with the private foundations to levy whatever those funds are. But to ask the state to provide the transportation, I think exposes us to unnecessary liability.
Would you be amenable to help us rewrite the bills in that way?
I don't think it's a question of legislation. I think it's a question of if your interest, from my perspective, I think it's a question if there's interest of maybe the legislature bringing together business people across the state
So, in other
to
words,
see if many charitable institutions, for example, already do provide these kinds of resources without levying state funds, and that's through their donations and other networks.
If we appropriated $63 million for homeless services next year, I don't see why we can't use any of that funds to at least somebody to spearhead it. I mean, you're throwing this out hoping that somebody from the private sector would come up and say, I'll do it.
And that was one suggestion that was brought on the table, and I'm just echoing that. I mean, the legislature representative is free to do what you will. I mean, this is your bill. You can move this forward as you see fit. I'm just expressing the department's concerns.
Thank you very much.
Members, any further questions? Seeing none. Members, we're going to go to the end of our agenda for the purpose of, we have our interpreter here, and for those of you who are here and need an interpreter, we're going to hear House Bill 1430 relating to human services, appropriates funds to establish and operate a comprehensive service center for deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind individuals effective July 1st, 2013. Francine Y., Executive Director, in support.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Carroll. I'm Francine Y. I'm the Executive Director of the Disability and Communication Access Board. You've already heard two other bills, House Bills 637 and 624 on this subject, and so we don't need to repeat our testimony, but I do want to show you that this binder is a collection of all of the studies and recommendations to establish a comprehensive deaf center, a comprehensive services center. So there is a need, it is justified, and that we we would not be the administering agency, so we would defer to Department of Human Services on the financial aspects and the operational ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Francine. Francine Kenyon. In support.
Hello. Hi, Madam Chair and Board, Vice Chair, and members of the committee and House, and friends that are here. My name is Francine Kenyon, and I represent the Hard of Hearing Deaf and Hard of Hearing Advisory Board, DHAB. DHAB has been involved as an involved group of deaf and hard of hearing members, and all of us have been involved in the deaf community. We had two special ed teachers from Pearl City High School and from the deaf school, and also parents of deaf children or deafblind children are involved in this board, and also the representatives from the VR administration. And this board was set up in 1980, and it was a collaborative effort to provide and advise on deaf services in the community and how VR provides services to the deaf community. I was here in Hawaii, and I went to the mainland and came back and thought, wow, services here in Hawaii are so very different from those on the mainland. And when I lived on the mainland for 19 years and came back home, it was quite a very, very kind of a culture shock for me. Now, if this center is established, this would be wonderful for us. It would be a place where deaf could gather, community, job skills, sometimes deaf people may have difficulty in employment, having a hard time maintaining a job because of other issues going on, whether at home. You know, many deaf people do not own their own homes or may not have the afford the ability to do so. But maybe the problem is we have many different studies after study, that repeatedly say the same thing. We don't need another study because we've had so many that say all the same thing. So I say forget having another study. We have to look at the deaf people and their needs and the importance of meeting their needs. So I don't think we need to waste any more money on a study. The CSC is very, very important. Would like to include two services, that you be aware of two services. One is for interpreter referral and one is for the independent adjustment service or independent living for the deaf. After June 30th, these two services will no longer be in existence, possibly. We don't know if interpreter referral services and independent living could be piggybacked into the bill of CSC to increase the money for that because of those two very, very critical services. Well, thank you so very much, and may God bless you all. Thank you very much. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Christine Holmes in support. Neil Okuna in support. Heather Benjamin in support. Carrie Lee in support. Laura Safransky in support. Renante Natividad in support. Susan Crow Unabia in support. Troy Abraham in support. Mala Arkin in support. Cheryl Mizusawa in support. Stanford Shimizu in support. Ed Chevy in support. Albert Marsh in support. Deborah Makahanaloa in support. Douglas Tong in support. Eileen Shiva in support. Elena Respicio in support. Fritz Anne Marie Divina in support. Grace Hika in support. Gregory Hika Jr. in support. Jared Katakura in support. Cami Koza in support. Laura Raiola in support. Lena Merrill in support. Mariah Dawn Ralar Panzalan in support. Mildred Garrett in support. Natashi Otani in support. Norman Galopin in support. Rosalind Engelman in support. Susan Nishino in support. Colleen Matuso in support. Billy Kekua in support. Colleen, we have her already. Members, is there anyone here wishing to testify on this measure? Director?
Yes, please.
I apologize for a late report, apparently. We have submitted our testimony. The Department of Human Services fully supports this bill and the intent. We ask that if it's passed, it does not replace or adversely impact priorities indicated in the executive biennium budget. I believe this version of the bill addresses the AG's concerns, which were previously articulated. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here wishing to testify?
Yes. Hello, good morning. My name is Pinky Ayola, and we don't want to postpone, so we need to do it now and soon, because before some of us become old. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Hello, my name is Lena. Good morning. And I am a student from the Hawaii School for the Deaf and Blind. I'm a former Miss Deaf Hawaii team 2010. And we all need to know who the deaf people are. We have deaf people, we need interpreters, and without that, how could we live without that? We would find ourselves stuck. Hearing people would find themselves stuck without interpreters to be able to communicate with us, so that we don't have to depend on other people. Deaf people, hearing students who have deaf hearing parents. Now, I'm going to be graduating. I'm a senior right now. And after that, when I go to college, what shall I do? I will need living skills. I will need interpreters for college. I will need to understand the teachers in class. That's very, very important for deaf people, and that's what we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Lokene, and I'm from Hawaii School for the Deaf and Blind. I want to support this comprehensive service center because I think it's very, very important. For example, some person who doesn't sign, it's very hard for me to communicate with them. I can get an interpreter because they understand my language and can help the other person help them understand me and me understand them. Sometimes languages are very complicated, so I want to understand an interpreter that is familiar with those words of the hearing person so that I can understand. I also want to support the CSC because this will affect and influence people who are familiar, who want to go to college. They want to take and get careers. They want to find jobs. They want to feel confident in themselves and be prepared and be ready to go to college and, you know, to learn how to be responsible at a job and to be responsible in life. And all those things are some things that I need and what we need. So we want to continue to support. This is a very, very valuable, and for us to also be to join it together with the deaf school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone here wishing to testify?
Good morning. My name is Billy Kekua. I am the president of Aloha State Association of the Deaf, and our organization is responsible for statewide to advocate for the deaf. This is a dream that has been in effect for 42 years. For these 42 years, you know, we want to celebrate a deaf center. We want to follow the example of Ho'opono, which is the services for the blind, which has been a long time providing services for the blind. So we'd like to see something very similar and parallel for the deaf as an example for services for all deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind individuals, so that those services can be given directly to clients instead of going through people who may not understand them. In establishing that, we can also grow in the different services that can be provided, where deaf people can feel a comfort and at ease because their language is readily accessible. Because sometimes when many deaf people go to other agencies, they're not fully understood because of the cultural and language barriers. So we support now maybe to have staff interpreters on board or to have other people on board who are also able to communicate with deaf people. So I really want to have interpreters available. Independent living skills is another to have available so that people can be served. And I think this is a dream I think is about time for us to be happening. So we really appreciate your effort in making this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rod McDonald. I am originally from New England, but I have lived in Hawaii for over 15 years. I am both deaf and blind and have been for most of my life. However, despite being deaf-blind, I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy, a master's degree in educational administration, and a year toward a doctorate in higher education administration. I worked for the federal government for 27 years, retiring as a GS-13 management analyst in the policy office. Since coming to Hawaii, I have had several positions, most recently adjunct professor teaching a graduate course at the University of Hawaii. These achievements did not come easily. With significant disability, you cannot pick yourself up by your bootstraps. If you try, you'll pull the straps off your boots or pull yourself to ground level. What is needed are opportunities. Opportunities for education, opportunities for training, opportunities for employment, and opportunities to believe in yourself. I have been very fortunate in that I received services from the area of deafness, the area of blindness, the area of deaf blindness, and even from a program designed for people who are developmentally disabled. All have helped, but the more specific the help, the more helpful it was. I know. I've been there and I've done that. Which brings us to the topic this morning. Establishment and operation of a comprehensive service center for deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind people. Something that's been on the agenda here in Hawaii for at least 15 years. But is only now coming to fruition. This center is needed to prepare us for college, for employment, and to enable us to be independent, self-sufficient, and self-reliant members of the community. While the Comprehensive Service Center is intended to provide basic training, I would also like to ask you to consider adding funding for interpreter, referral, and independent living services that were not a part of the legislation when it was first introduced. These services are needed to assist the exact same population with the exact same objectives of basic education, community integration, and personal empowerment. These services need to be added here because the funding for them was lost elsewhere. I have been very fortunate in that I have benefited from a good education. I have earned well over $1 million during my working life and paid the taxes, and I have had many fulfilling life experiences. Yet I could not provide this testimony if it were not for the skills I had learned along the way. Communication skills, Braille, using a computer, and so on. I could not attend this hearing if it were not the services of an interpreter. In closing, I would like to ask that you support very strongly this legislation before you, HB 1430. I ask that you give deaf, hard of hearing, and the deaf-blind people of Hawaii some of the same opportunities that have been given to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone here wishing to testify?
Yes, please. Hello, my name is Amy Suji Jones, and I'm a member of the deaf community and have been for many, many years. I remember when I was a little girl looking up, and they were talking about a deaf center then. And I'm wondering, will I see one in my lifetime? So I'd like to see one in my lifetime. I've gone to different places on the mainland, and they have deaf centers there. Hawaii needs one because it is empowering to our deaf community, to the deaf and hard of hearing and the deaf blind, because it allows us to exchange knowledge and to gain knowledge. So please do support this center so that I can see one before I leave this earth.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Colleen Sidati Matusa. I'm a representative and an advocate for the deaf community. These are my people. And I know that you've heard many, many times, and I thought of something else. If you get the idea of feeling what feeling included is, like when you're at a movie theater, anywhere, whether it's Kahala Mall or Ward Center, any theater that you can think of here on the island, I'm wondering, when a deaf person goes in, is that accessible to them, that movie? No, because there's no captioning, which means that the cost is not equal, that others have the same access, which means I'm paying all along. Our people have survived and have bared with this. And so it has left us out and has brought us to a place of being left behind. So we don't want to be left out as a deaf community. We want a center there where we can go and have access, to have communication, to socialize, to become kind of like a second home. I really look forward to it. Thank you very much for your support of this. I thank you for your 100% support for this bill, for the CSC 1430. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone here wishing to testify? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay. Representative
Director, do we have a cost estimate? Or a range, maybe? Give us a...
If my recollection, Representative Kobayashi serves me correctly, the Department of Human Services has earmarked approximately $300,000, Joe, is that correct, in its budget to provide services at the deaf center that are attached to our funding for rehab services. I believe the deaf community had indicated approximately, Joe's at another $300,000? An additional $300,000 would need to be appropriated, but you might want to check with the community.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director. Any further questions, members? Seeing none, members, we'll go back up the agenda to House Bill 986 relating to foster care services. Increases the monthly board rate distributed by the Department of Human Services for foster care services for children. Director McManaman, in support.
Good morning again. The Department of Human Services supports the intent of the bill, but is concerned about its fiscal impact and notes that it would require additional appropriation from state general funds. We estimated, based upon projected census, that if board rate were to be raised by $75 per month, an additional $5.2 million per year in state general funds would need to be appropriated. The foster board rate just not only pays for foster board just anecdotally, but is also the benchmark for adoption assistance, permanency assistance, and higher education board allowance payments. I would suggest if this committee is amenable, that the DHS would be willing to take a look at this issue over the summer to report back to the legislature. A quick look at some of the other jurisdictions across the United States shows that some, not all, have a weighted formula, and by weighted formula I simply mean rather than a flat board payment across the board for all age groups, infants would receive one level of payment, toddlers another, and certainly it would look like, on my just quick visual assessment, teens, because we all know that teens eat more, consume more, and are just more costly just across the board. It looks like that there's a higher monthly payment for those. So we could look at those issues. We could perhaps come back to the legislature with a recommendation, do full calculations, and work with the community in the process. So we're not adverse to that, and it actually might be a better solution than a just across the board increase, rather an increase that really looks at the cost of raising our foster kids.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Judith Wilhoit, Family Programs Hawaii.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chair Carroll and committee members, for allowing me to testify on HB 986. I am the family advocate for Family Program Hawaii's It Takes an Ohana program, and I have an advisory committee of resource caregivers and foster parents, and we strongly support this bill. It's been 22 years since the reimbursement rate for the needs of the children has been raised. What we do in our homes as resource caregivers and adoptive parents, I think, is the most important thing that can be done. And what it is taking children who have been traumatized and giving them stability, nurturance, and the belief in themselves that they're okay, and keeping them safe until the time has come where they're able to go home or move on to a permanent home. And that benefits everyone. We all know things have changed price-wise since 1990. I called the Hawaii State Data Center and asked what the cost for a basket of food was in 1990 compared to what it is now. In 1990, a basket of food that you would prepare at home was $24.71. The same basket today would cost you $54.23. So that's more than a 100% increase. And that's just one of the items that that resource caregivers are reimbursed for in the 529 reimbursement rate. There's 13 items that are listed in Title 4E that are to be reimbursed for, and the state takes care of some of them separately, such as the health insurance and transportation. But there's items like child care alone can cost as much or more than the 529 itself. I think I would assume we'd all agree that children are our most precious resource, and so I just humbly ask that you consider providing the funds necessary for our families taking care of our children so that their needs can be met. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda Santos, President and CEO of Family Programs Hawaii and Support. Judith Clark, Executive Director of Hawaii Youth Services Network. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Judith Clark, Executive Director of Hawaii Youth Services Network, a statewide coalition of youth-serving agencies, and we are in strong support of this bill. Our current foster care rates do not cover the actual costs of caring for the young people in the foster care system, and this makes it difficult to recruit and retain foster families. Families who are interested in caring for foster children are telling youth workers that they cannot afford the costs that they themselves would have to contribute from their personal funds. They do not choose to become foster parents for the money. The issue is that the amount of the board payment does not cover the cost of caring for a child's basic needs. We can increase the stability of young people in care by increasing foster care rates, because children will be more likely to be able to live with one stable family throughout their time in foster care. When children are moved around to multiple homes, they have difficulty forming trusting relationships with caregivers, have more difficulty in school, and they are more likely to have emotional and behavioral issues. By maintaining a larger pool of foster families to match with the children, we can also increase the probability that the foster family will have similar culture, value, and interests to the child. The child will be more likely to live in a familiar community and be able to continue to attend the same school. Increasing the stipend for foster care will also help the transitioning foster youth who participate in the Higher Education Board program. By increasing the funds that they have for basic expenses, they will be able to work fewer hours, allowing more time to concentrate on their education. This will increase college graduation rates, leading to greater self-sufficiency and less future dependence on public assistance. Foster parents are already donating their time to take care of foster youth. If this bill passes, they won't have to donate their savings as well. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Sanette Dayton in support. Brittany Dayton in support. Kevin Dayton in support. Michael,
Good morning, Chair
Good morning.
Carol. Thank you for considering this bill. I just wanted to very briefly summarize my testimony. I'm Kevin Dayton. My wife and I are foster parents in Hilo. Just wanted to express the concern that freezing foster board reimbursements for 22 years does impose a hardship on our foster families and the kids, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Dale in support. Sandra Dale in support. Chiomi Chow in support. Karen DeSoto in support. Letha DeCarix in support. Marilyn Yamamoto in support. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? Please come forward.
Good morning, Chairwoman and committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jamie McCourt. I am a resource caregiver, commonly known as a foster parent, for one general licensing slot, which means I can take children in on a longer-term basis. And we've also just become, my husband and I have just become licensed as an emergency shelter, so that's 2 opportunities to take children in for a period of 30 days while they're, the social workers try to find a permanent placement for them. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of this bill. It seems completely ironic to me that there has been no increase in the reimbursement in 22 years, so I'm not going to give you the statistics of cost of living increases and, as Judith indicated, what food actually costs. I thought I would try to put a personal face on this by just illustrating what one baby has cost. So,
could you speak louder?
Oh, I'm
for
sorry.
the people in the back. Thank you.
I did a quick calculation on diapers and formula alone for a 3-month-old baby that has been in my care. He is a typical drug-affected infant, commonly placed throughout the system at 2 days old, so taken from the hospital directly. A conservative count of 10 diapers for a 24-hour cycle at a sale price of 36 diapers for $10.99. And formula, which a 12.4-ounce can of formula covers about 3 days, and that comes to $152. So basically, over half of the stipend that is given for the board of this infant, over half of that goes just to diapers and formulas. So this doesn't take into consideration the added cost of laundry detergent, water and electricity for 2 loads a day, utilities, or even batteries to run a baby swing, which in this case, that is the only way that a lot of these drug-affected babies can be comforted. They cannot be consoled. They cannot be held necessarily. And in this case, this baby suffers from acid reflux syndrome, so it's mandatory that I have to have this swing going, basically 20 hours. And then to take into the consideration housing costs in a neighborhood that actually understands and tolerates the piercing screams of withdrawal throughout the day and night. This added to transportation and expenses for clothing and special equipment that might be needed. So, like most resource caregivers, we did not consider monthly payment when deciding to do this. To give back to the community was our aim, and to help change the lives of our most vulnerable children. So in our case, 0 to 5 years old. What I didn't expect when I became a resource caregiver is that I would have to use my own money to assure that the basic needs of these children were met. So I tried to do a little research, and the only thing that I could find was a 1993 report from California, Improving Treatment for Drug-Exposed Infants Improvement Protocol. And they reported at that time, so this is basically almost as long as the reimbursement hasn't been increased from $5.29 a month, that a per day cost of caring for a drug-exposed infant in a neonatal intensive care unit was about $1,700. So this is 20 years later, and I can only imagine the cost savings to the state of Hawaii that foster families are now providing, getting these babies at 2 days old. The only last point that I would like to make is that in addition to the traditional caring that we're doing, it's now expected of licensed resource families to actually cover transportation and monitoring of Ohana visits. They're not called visitations any longer because all the studies have proven that the most contact that the child has with the birth parents, that enhances the opportunity for reconciliation, and so that means that it's taking the tax burden off of the state. So we have to now actually supervise visitations from drug addicted, alcoholic, and often mentally unstable and undiagnosed birth parents. We have to coordinate visits and transportation to occupational, physical therapy, speech classes, and psychiatry and psychologist visits. Anecdotal evidence from local support groups, which most of us attend, suggests that Hawaii is losing many of its long-term foster care families, and I'm sure that inadequate foster board payments is a contributing factor. So thank you for addressing this issue. I really hope that it passes so that Hawaii can continue to retain loving foster families to care for our children.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, members, we have a lot of bills still to go, and we have an 11 o'clock agenda, and we also have an 11:15 agenda. So for those of you who are testifying, if you can stand on your testimony, that would be great. If there's something new you want to add to your testimony as we go through these bills, if we can try to make them short so we can get through our agenda. Next measure is House Bill 10006, relating to the Family Justice Centers, allows DHS to create a Family Justice Center task force to consider the establishment of Family Justice Centers to assist victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, elderly abuse, or human trafficking, and provide family-based social services. And the first testifier we have is our director.
Stand on our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. In support, Catherine Matayoshi, the DOE, in support. John Karamatsu, in support. Sure.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, John Ricky Karamatsu, Honolulu Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. As far as the Family Justice Center is concerned, we're progressing with ours, which is slated to be open this July. So we're just wondering how this task force will interface with our Justice Center, and we do support the intent to expand to other counties. Okay. So with that in mind, and also we talked with the author of the bill, and he said one of the primary goals is to help with the funding. We had a bill last 2 sessions to get funding for our Justice Center. Unfortunately, it didn't make it, but if it's the goal for the state to participate in helping fund these Justice Centers, we'll be more than happy to receive funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Cofield, Imua Alliance, in support. Nancy Creedman, Domestic Violence Center, in support. Adriana Romelli, Executive Director, the Sex Abuse Treatment Center, in support. Veronica Geronimo, Executive Director, Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in support. Or in opposition, excuse me. Catherine Zion, Executive Director, Pacific Alliance to Stop Slavery, in support. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, next bill is House Bill 1035 relating to Medicaid, prohibits nonprofit or for-profit Medicaid health insurance contractors and the MedQuest division of DHS from modifying reimbursement policies and guidelines without providing written notice of the change, prohibits retroactive application of changes if approval for the reimbursement was obtained from Medicaid or a Medicaid health insurance contractor prior to the effective date of the change in the notice. Director McManaman, in opposition.
The Department of Human Services stands on its testimony in opposition.
Thank you very much. Javier Mendez Alvarez in support. Ruthie Agbayani in support. Troy Abraham in support. Paula Acerna, Director of Public Policy, Aloha Care, in opposition. Robert Hirokawa, CEO of Hawaii Prime Care Association, in support. Jennifer Diesman, Vice President, Government Relations, HMSA. Thank you very much. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay. We also have, I'm sorry, members, we have late testimony here from Jane Gibbons, Regional Vice President from Fresenius Medical Care, in support. Okay, members, moving right along to House Bill 1113 relating to electronic benefits transfer cards, requires federal waiver to be sought and cost study to be conducted regarding the inclusion of the cardholder's photo on electronic benefits transfer cards, requires the cardholder whose electronic benefits cards lack a photo to present a photo identification for certain transactions, effective July 1st, 2013. The Director of Human Services.
Department of Human Services stands on its testimony.
Thank you very much. Comments. Brandy Nalani McDougall in support. Wayne Takamine in support. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay. Members, moving right along to House Bill 1137 relating to family court, clarifies the appointment requirements and qualifications for child custody evaluators, requires the courts to establish a complaint process, reserves the appointment of a child custody evaluator for the conducting of an investigation and analysis of the best interest of the child regarding disputed custody and visitation issues in complex cases where there is a possible risk to children, and that the court shall not order such an evaluation unless there is credible information regarding possible harm to the child or impairment of parental duties. Mark Browning, the judiciary, in comments? Anybody from the judiciary? John Kurimitsu, the law office of John Kurimitsu, comments. Thank you for being here.
Hi. Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is John Kurimitsu. I'm an attorney testifying in strong support of this bill with proposed amendments. And just to give you a little background, the result of this proposed measure is through a collaborated group, a work group, and with special thanks to Senator Chun Oakland for organizing the concerted efforts of this group, but mainly to address the need and urgency to improve Hawaii's custody evaluator process. The purpose of this bill is threefold. One is to establish minimum licensing requirements for custody evaluators, and just to note that in Hawaii, attorneys are allowed to serve as custody evaluators, unlike in California, without specialized knowledge in child family dynamics or psychiatry or psychologist background. Secondly, to establish transparency, the purpose of this bill is to create a custody evaluator registry to allow consumers and users to have a freedom of choice on who are the best qualified custody evaluators to use in the family court arena. And third is to establish a complaint grievance process to maintain the integrity, ethical integrity, and accountability of those child custody evaluators, because they do impact the court and make decision making throughout the family court process. So they have a very integral role in this judicial process in the family court. The proposed amendments that I proposed that the committee consider is to address the judiciary's concerns. They did state in the companion bill on the Senate side that they had concerns over some of the processes. So basically our amendments are replacing the court and replacing it with the general umbrella of judiciary to maintain this registry of the custody evaluators. And also Judge Browning did note that concern that the court does not have the authority to discipline custody evaluators. So his suggestion and judiciary's suggestion was to do a referral process where the court could refer the complainant to the proper licensing board for disciplinary actions against these custody evaluators, which we propose is a good idea. And again, from my personal interest in having gone through this process, my GAL custody evaluator was an attorney in Hawaii, so the Office of Disciplinary Counsel in Hawaii refuses to hold or to discipline any custody evaluator who's an attorney because that attorney is practicing outside the scope of their practice area. So really there's no accountability there for if you're an attorney who's serving in this capacity. So we'd like to ask your consideration of the proposed amendments, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Laurie Hirohata, in support.
Hi, Laurie Hirohata, and thank you for having us before you. Just wanted to say a quick addition to my testimony. I stand in support of this bill, and I just want to say I want to append the organizational chart for judiciary so you can understand that I have the handouts with your clerks. Judge Browning, one of the things he's pointing out is the courts, meaning this section, was not the correct place to put it. The registry as well as the complaint process, and it does go on this side, the administrative of courts. And so I have this handout for you that will be appended to my testimony. Thank you. And I am available if any of you have any other questions outside of the hearing. Please contact me. Feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. Melinda Franklin, in support. Tom Marzek, in support. Troy Abraham, in support. Sherry Tarutani, custody evaluator, in support. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in this measure? Please come forward.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Myrna Murdoch. I did submit testimony, and it's registered with your staff. I would just like to thank you very much for holding this hearing. Also, thanks to Senator Chun Oakland. But it's very important. We're so lucky as citizens of the state of Hawaii. If we have an issue with whatever we purchase, we have recourse. We can go to the appropriate agency. We can complain to the manager. But with our children, which is our most precious commodity, if there's an issue with a custody evaluator, we have no recourse. There's no venue where we can even say, excuse me, I believe you should look at the curricula vitae or whatever. I just think that in today's age with technology so prevalent, it's mandatory. We should have some sort of checks and balances for the benefit of our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Members, we have 2 more bills on this agenda. I'd like to check with the Chair of Health because we have a joint. Would you like us to recess and then open up our 11 a.m. agenda? Because I think we only have 2 bills on that agenda, yeah? And then we'll come back to our agenda here.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Members, recess on this agenda.